It now seems distinctly possible, as we learn more and more every day and every hour, that Republicans have attempted to steal a congressional election in North Carolina with the most brazen electoral fraud in a generation. All right, the state's Board of Elections, which is a bipartisan body, has now twice declined to certify the midterm results in North Carolina's 9th District, where Republican Mark Harris appeared to win by only 905 votes over his Democratic opponent. And that is because of really striking irregularities in absentee ballots in the district. In affidavits, some voters say that people came to their door and collected ballots, often unsealed and unfinished ballots. But as WFAE in Charlotte noted, quote, unless a voter is disabled, it's against the law for a third party to collect absentee ballots by mail from voters. And the ballot irregularities appear to have disproportionately affected voters of color. As the News and Observer calculated, quote, more than 40% of the mail-in ballots requested by African Americans and more than 60% of those requested by American Indians did not make it back to elections officials. For white voters, that figure was just 17%. Brian Murphy, a reporter with McClatchy and North Carolina's News and Observer newspapers, has been following this story. All right, what is the latest as of today?
Well, the biggest development today is that there's another report that the consultant for Mark Harris may have had these ballots just delivered to his house, and that no one is quite sure what happened to the ballots, if they made it back to the election board or didn't. And as the numbers you pointed out just illustrate, a lot of these ballots did not make it back.
So I want to just be clear here, and I'm going to play this sound from the local news reporting on this. There's a guy named McCrae Dowless, who's a local sort of conservative grassroots campaigner who's done time for fraud before. He was working for the Harris campaign, the Republican campaign. Is that correct?
That's correct. He was an independent contractor with the Harris campaign.
And that's confirmed, right? So he was working for the Harris campaign. He was an independent contractor. He's got a history of fraud. And I just want to be clear on this North Carolina law. You can't send people to collect people's absentee ballots, even if you don't tamper with them. Like, that on its face is illegal in North Carolina, right?
Right.
So you can't do that.
You cannot.
Okay. No. There are places where you can do that. I just want to be clear here. This is the local news reporting from WSOC TV, contacting some folks that appear to have worked with McCrae Dowless in collecting ballots. Take a look.
So what were you doing for these?
I was helping McCrae pick up ballots.
Eason says McCrae Dowless paid her $75 to $100 a week to go around and pick up finished absentee ballots. Dowless is the Bladen County Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor who appears to be at the center of the state investigation. He was named twice in sworn affidavits as a worker for the Mark Harris campaign. Eason says she never discarded ballots or saw who people were voting for. But after picking them up, she didn't mail them. She gave them to McCrae Dowless.
Did all the people who voted, did their votes count?
I guess. Like I said, I don't know nothing what happened after I dropped them off.
Some great local reporting from Joe Bruno there. So what does that mean? Like, if this is true?
Well, there are investigations by not only the State Board of Elections, Wake County, which is where Raleigh is also investigating it. There are irregularities not only in the general election, but dating back to the primary. And if you go back to the 2016 GOP primary in the 9th District and in Bladen County, there are also irregularities. Wake County's investigation dates all the way back to that. The next step will be to see what the state board does, and they can order a new election, even if the number of votes that were affected, the number of ballots that were affected, would not swing the entire election. If the taint affects the entire election, or if they feel like there's no way that this election could be considered fair, the state board does hold the power to order a new election to happen in North Carolina 9.
I want to go back to one thing you said. There are similar statistical irregularities going back to 2016 in this county and in the primary in this county, right? That Harris does better, that other people had drop-offs in their absentee coming back to the office compared to Harris in the Republican primary, right?
In the Republican primary in 2018, Harris got 437 mail-in absentee ballots from Bladen County. Robert Pittenger, the sitting representative from that district, got 17. in a race that was basically 50-50. It was decided by 828 votes, and yet about 400 different in just mail-in ballots. If you look in the general election, even in Union County, which Harris won, McCready won the mail-in absentee ballots. The only county in which in the district in which Harris won the mail-in absentee ballots was Bladen County,
where McCrae Dallas apparently, according to that reporting, was paying people $75 to $100 a week to go around and pick up those ballots. Brian Murphy, thanks for that reporting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Here with me now, Wayne Goodwin, the chairman of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Is it the Democratic Party's position that there should be a new election in North Carolina 9?
Yes, that is our position, and we also want to ensure that there is no certification of this congressional race until after a full, thorough public evidentiary hearing by the state board.
The Republicans are complaining about two things. One, they're saying that the Board of Elections is operating secretly and that the person who is in charge of that board is a Democratic Party, quote, hyper-partisan. What do you say to that?
I'd say they're trying to change the narrative. I mean, it's quite interesting that, for years now, particularly the last couple of years, all they could talk about was voter fraud here or alleged voter fraud there, and they would never want to touch or talk about the problems with absentee ballots. And now that their candidate, their nominee, is in the midst of the greatest election tampering I've seen, perhaps any of us have seen in a generation or more, they are nowhere to be found. And so they're trying to talk about the former chair of the State Board of Elections who has resigned, and that was the right thing to do. The board should be allowed to do its investigation, and the Republican Party should step out of the way and let this investigation happen. And I believe there should be a new election.
What's the timeline look like? Have you ever encountered a situation like this? I have covered politics for a while, and I've never quite seen something like this.
I have never encountered this in my life. I've been involved in politics for 40 years now, since I was a kid, and I've never seen this happen before. But we have the election itself is called into question. It has been tainted, and with the stories that I've heard from folks in the two counties where these activities happen, is shameful that the victims here are voters themselves. This is not voter fraud. This is where voters have become the victims by this scheme, by this particular scheme. And it's shameful, and there needs to be a full investigation of this, and the Republicans need to let the investigation happen. There is a new chair of the State Board of Elections, so they can't be crying that any further.
That new chair, do they have do you have a sense of the timeline here? I mean, is this the kind of thing you can wrap up in a week? I mean, you got to move pretty quickly. The Congress is going to happen soon.
The state board decided that they would have a public hearing on or before December 21st. So there is quite a quick turnaround on this, and this is to ensure that the facts are found out, and that if there needs to be further actions taken, they can be taken. It also takes into account the fact that Congress does reconvene January the 3rd. So this is a quick turnaround, but they're going to do the very best they can, and I have every confidence that this board is going to give it a full and thorough investigation, as it should.
Should there be criminal investigations?
Yes. I mean, the allegations that we have all heard about violate the law. And when you hear about folks who have people come to their door they don't know about collecting absentee ballots, when you hear about folks who come to their door and are telling voters, oh, don't worry about filling out your ballot, we'll take care of the rest of it, and where ballots are not being sealed, ballots are not being signed, they're being sent to some unknown address. And then when you have folks who've completed sworn affidavits where they say that Mr. Dallas, who you've talked about a moment ago, has allegedly been promised $40,000 if Mark Harris won the election, and then another affidavit that says that he has 80 people working with him on absentee ballots. This is criminal activity, I believe.
All right, Wayne Goodman, thank you for your time. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.